So it was probably around 3 years ago when I started messing around with infinite water sources. And I'm not talking about where you have two diagonal sources that intersect and it creates an infinite water source. I'm talking about water that just flows continuously throughout the entire world. I had a comment from Ben1Gen who asked me, can you implement infinite lava in the nether? And I realized that I had never actually done this with lava. Okay, so here's my village. You can see that you have lava instead of water in these pockets here, and I'm going to explain why in a second. And I'm going to place one water block all the way up in the sky. So the village is somewhere over there, and that flowing water is going to descend very slowly. The reason why it's not actually falling right now is because I modified the ticking speed of water to be very, very slow. To explain why, I need to demonstrate with this example right here. So I'm going to set block a flowing lava block, and it's going to flow infinitely. So it's not going to stop. You can see that the source continues to replenish itself. It's kind of laggy, but the level doesn't actually increase. It just stays on the super flat world, and it doesn't flow upwards like water does. So you can see after a bit of time, as it kind of loads all the chunks in, it's not going to do a lot of damage. You have to wait for the fire tick to activate to kind of wipe out all the planks. But other than that, it doesn't actually increase in its level. It just stays kind of stationary. Let me do the same thing, but with water this time. And now, okay, so I made water a lot slower, and now as the water kind of hits the ground, if you remember from my video 3 years ago, the water actually increases. So it creates a wave, like a tsunami, like this. It's quite amazing to see it that way, because water doesn't really behave this way, but it's like a tsunami, and now it's going to wipe out both villages really, really quickly, even though I made it pretty slow. So now, they have to fly away now, but now you can see that it's being inundated with the water. It's going to be kind of drenched. Lava just sits on the ground. It doesn't do anything. But here you can see all the damage can be done fairly automatically. So we're back in this world, which I quit out of before. Now what I'm going to do is the moment the water hits the ground, I'm going to set the speed back to 0, like this. Now the water is going to stop flowing immediately, because I made it so slow that with random tick speed 0, the water is not going to flow at all. But I've made lava very, very fast. That's the difference here. So essentially, I'm going to allow the lava to use the water as a platform to flow onto. So the lava is updating pretty quickly now, and once it reaches the level of the water, I'm going to set it back to 0. There we go. Okay, so now the lava is going to use the water as a platform to create a mountain over the village. So let's see how much water there is. Looks pretty good. Let's try and get it up to a little bit more. Yeah, it takes a bit of time to update, but now you can see what I'm trying to do here, and that is allow the lava to have that base so it inherits the Y level of the water, and now it looks like it's going to start using it as a hill to sort of slide down like a volcano. So this is the first world that I used to test this out. You can see that this is actually the thumbnail of this video, where I had a smaller size here, but the water source was way over there, and it leveled out, and it started to get really, really slow. Nonetheless, you can see the same effect has occurred, where the lava has simply driven over this village, but it's kind of stopped. So you can see that it's doing well over here, but then the water died out, and the lava just kept going, but it never reached the heights that I wanted it to. It's still burning the village. And then we had this. This is the ambitious side of me, where I wanted to kind of go as mad as I could, but you can see that the game has actually stopped completely. The chunks are right here. You can see that the borders are pretty visible because the game froze, and I wanted to keep exploring, but it just hung, so it didn't continue to flow, it just stopped. In fact, if you look closely, you can see that it actually stops 15 and then 0. That's where it is. You can see the water inside that I'm using as the platform, but you can see the chunk borders right here, but it's really not very coherent anymore. So this is one of those things where I wanted to see how far it would go and whether it could just completely decimate the village, but it's just stopped here, and now we have a pile of vomit that's just solidified on this side of the world. A couple of things that are worth explaining at this point. Number one, if you try to load up a normal world, it will not work. So as you can see here, I'm trying to actually load a full-blown survival creative world that is not super flat. It just won't load with this with lava being affected, all block liquids are affected, so water will continue to try to flow as well, but because water is pretty much everywhere in the world, it's not going to handle that. And finally, of course, you might be wondering what happens when the player goes into the nether and what happens to the lava here. Well, it's pretty simple. It is actually very, very slow because there are so many sources of lava. Some of them actually require some updating for it to actually work, but there are pockets of lava where it would actually be directed to flow downwards where it can. So this lava won't actually flow that way because it's being asked to flow down here. Well, now that I mentioned it, it's actually kind of starting to expand. This might start flowing this way, but it's hard to tell because this is lag that you're hearing right now. Maybe you can hear my computer, but it's trying to process all of the different sources of lava, and it's not going to happen. So it will flow away, but it's just way too slow to even start processing all of that information. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Leave a like, subscribe for more creative content. Take care.